Now, Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs have led to turmoil in the global financial markets. About $2.5 trillion was wiped off Wall Street and share prices in other financial centers across the globe. The escalating trade war, it's knocked trillions of dollars of the value of the world's biggest companies, and of course, it's heightened fears of a recession. But US President insisted that the US economy will emerge victorious. Wall Street led a global markets bloodbath on Thursday. The S&P 500 dropped 4.8% in its biggest loss since 2020, while the tech-rich Nasdaq plummeted 6% and the Dow Jones lost 4%. Shock waves also tore through markets in Asia and Europe. Apple fell over 9%, losing more than $250 billion in the market value. Shares in apparel companies, which rely on cheap labor and factories abroad, fell sharply, with Nike sinking more than 11% and Gap tanking more than 20%. Across the globe, shares in major sectors, including auto, luxury and banking, also took a big hit. Now, the dollar slumped by as much as 2.6% versus the euro, its biggest intraday plunge in a decade, and suffered sharp losses also against the yen and the British pound. But Trump remained defiant, saying all this was expected. Comparing the economy to a sick patient, the US president claimed that it has gone through an operation as he left for a weekend at his Florida golf resorts. Trump insisted that stocks will boom.
I think it's going very well. It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
Now, Trump has slapped 10% import duties on all nations and far higher levies on imports from dozens of specific countries, including top trade partners China and the European Union. Separate tariffs of 25% on all foreign-made cars also went into effect. Canada has swiftly responded with a similar levy on US imports. China demanded that the tariffs be immediately cancelled and vowed countermeasures, while France and Germany warned that the EU could hit back at US tech firms. French President Emmanuel Macron called for suspending investment in the United States until what he called the brutal new tariffs had been cleared.
The decision announced last night is both brutal and unfounded. It is unfounded because trade imbalances are not corrected by imposing tariffs. Economic theory clearly demonstrates the opposite, particularly when these imbalances fail to account for sectors such as digital services, among others. Ultimately, this decision will impact all sectors of our economies. Out of the $500 billion worth of goods exported by Europeans to the United States, we can already see that more than 70% will be affected by these tariffs.
Now, Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called for frank discussion on the substance with the Americans. IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva said new US tariffs clearly represent a significant risk to the global outlook and urged Washington to work with its trade partners. For more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Listen to this.
Global markets plunged after President Donald Trump announced sweeping import tariffs, including a 10% rate on most countries starting April 5th, and higher rates up to 34% on key partners like China and the EU from April 9th. The Dow dropped significantly, and major companies like Apple, Nike, and Amazon saw shares all fall sharply due to their global supply chains. In response, Canada imposed a 25% tariff on non-compliant U.S. vehicles, while the U.K. unveiled a 400-page list of potential U.S. targets. The White House has urged confidence in President Trump's plan, calling it a long-term move to strengthen American industries. But fears of a trade war are rising by the hour. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.